Be honest, Taylor, you were sceptical of his move before there, more so of the club. But bear in mind where the club were when he arrived and where they got to. How much of a success has the move been?
He's been fantastic, Jeff. He's been absolutely fantastic. In the first sit-down interview he did was with us at ESPN, and when I sat down with him and looked across the table and saw in his eyes, I was like, they're getting the Wayne Rooney. Now, whether or not how much tread's left on those tires, you guys know that better than me because I think he's an older 32 than many would want to admit. But this is a club that struggled for a long time, and they won early on in their franchise history. They didn't spend any money. They were bottom. They were trying to build a stadium. My worry was they were putting all of this on the shoulders of Wayne Rooney when they had no training center, no real academy. They're still one of the few academies, if the only academy in the United States that charges players still, youth players, right? It's not free. Now they're fixing that. So I just bring that why I was skeptical. But Wayne Rooney's been fantastic. He's been a home run. He's done it very professionally. But we have to give the truth to the situation as well. He didn't have to travel. So the Steven Gerrards and the Frank Lampards that came over to Major League Soccer, cross-country, 6-hour flights, Wayne Rooney came to the United States. They played 75% of their games at home at D.C. So it allowed him to get his feet under him, be at home, get his family situated. I think he's going to be fine now because he's gotten that 6 months under him. But a lot of the players, when they come over, Tim Cahill really struggled when he came over, but they all do. It's a travel no one's ever seen, where you fly from New York to Seattle to L.A., and then you got to fly back. Wayne Rooney's been a home run. I just hope D.C. uses this kickstart the way they should and not just says, okay, for the 3 years we got Wayne Rooney, it's great, now we're done.
Ollie, you went out to see Wayne. What did you make, not so much, I mean, the stats for themselves, but his actual demeanour as a person? How did he seem to you in enjoying the adventure?
Well, I agree with what Taylor said. I mean, I think look, I've always been a huge fan of Rooney, and I think, you know, when he was at United and Cristiano Ronaldo was there, Rooney did an awful lot of Ronaldo. You know, I'm not saying Ronaldo's not an absolutely magnificent player, but Rooney made him an even better player because he did a lot of his work for him. Rooney's always been a team player, and I think that one of the secrets of his success at DC United is that he's continued to be a team player. And I mean, as Taylor was saying, with the best will in the world, it must be a little bit of a culture shock because you go even from Finch Farm, Everton, or certainly Manchester United's training facilities to DC United change in the ruins. Really, would be the best way of describing it, of the RFK Stadium, which is a decrepit, unused stadium. And again, as Taylor was saying, the training facilities are two sort of fairly dodgy AstroTurf pitches with nothing else there. So
basic.
It's basic, but I think it says a lot about him that he has thrived there, and that he has lifted the ability level of the players around him.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. There's a parallel between Wayne Rooney's going to get his last cap tomorrow night and Jadon Sancho's going to get his first cap tomorrow night. And we've been talking forever about English players going out of their comfort zone, playing abroad, learning a different culture. And I think doing that has revitalised Wayne. He seems like the Wayne of 2 or 3 years ago. And sometimes when players come out of the comfort zone, bring their families out, a completely different playing environment, different league, you bring out qualities that maybe wouldn't have been there if he had stayed at Everton or stayed at Manchester United. Everton he was at from the age of however old he was, a young boy, goes to Manchester United, goes back to Everton. Then all of a sudden you go 4,000 miles across the Atlantic, completely new surroundings, new environment, and he thrives in it. And I think it's been fantastic for DC United, but I think it's been fantastic for Wayne himself. And I think there's parallels with now Jadon Sancho doing the same thing at a young age, saying, for my football, I'm going to go abroad and learn something different. And it might bring the best out of me, but I'm going to be out of my comfort zone, and it's down to me. And I think Wayne's thriving off that at the moment.
But let me ask you guys, because I think Wayne Rooney played in the wrong position for his last days at Everton. You don't think he could score 10, 12 goals in the Premier League at the present time?
I think
if he's played in the right position, in the right system?
He's never going to lose the ability to finish, is he?
To finish, yeah. But at that time, Everton had signed 3 or 4 players similar to Wayne. They signed Klaassen, Sigurdsson. Yeah. There was a real different dynamic about that Everton squad. And at that time, they needed pace. That's when Calvert-Lewin comes into the team and does so well, because they needed pace in behind to create space for those types of players. So I think Wayne was unfortunate in his move to Everton. It came at a bad time for him in terms of Ronald Koeman when he was there. We spoke about Fulham. It's amazing. Everton, the same thing in terms of spending, but with no real plan. And Wayne was a part of that, and I think it didn't help his performances here. I think the change of environment's been great for him.
Well, talking of players going outside their comfort zone, you look at the starting 11 tomorrow night for the USA, probably over half play their football abroad, don't they?
Yes. And I think Christian Pulisic is a huge part of that. You know, we just talked about developing a world-class player. I think you're going to see this trend over the next, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, but especially when you look at this team that will play England tomorrow night. You look at Tyler Adams, who in January is rumored to be going to Red Bull Leipzig in the Bundesliga, Weston McKennie, who's at Schalke. You look at all these players, I think at a young age, are looking at what Christian Pulisic has been able to do at Dortmund. A lot of them want to take that chance. Now, it's Major League Soccer's job to get a piece of that pie and say, well, we need to have these players, because Christian Pulisic should have been a Philadelphia Union Academy player, if you catch my drift, and then you ship him on, and then you become part of this world landscape. But right now, all I hear from European scouts is that if we can get the American player from 16 to 18, these kids have a legitimate chance of playing over here and playing at a very high level. Ultimately, that's going to make the United States better. But, Jeff, in saying all of that, when you look at the team, how many of them are playing regularly? See, that's the next step.
Well, that's the also as well for any young player as well, to a degree, there is a financial aspect as well. When you look at the MLS now, it's increasing season after season in terms of the number of teams. As a model, is it absolutely right now, the MLS? Do you think it's right?
I think right now the answer is yes, but I think that bubble bursting is coming much sooner than they thought. And
why? What's worrying you?
It's not a worry. Well, my worry is that Major League Soccer doesn't recognize that where they are in this moment and where this sport is really there. For instance, at ESPN on television, our sales are gone like that. We're in the same conversation, think of this, because our demographic is all under the age of 25. The sport is there and it's ready to go. The problem is, in order to get here, the United States and Major League Soccer had to be a single entity. It had to be the model that it is. But exposure to the sport in the world game, like here in England, Germany, Spain, and then you throw on top of that Champions League, you've now got markets, guys, that 3 years ago no one would have thought. The fact that Cincinnati, Ohio is going to have a 20,000-plus seat stadium, roof over it, they've got an owner that's going to pay over $250 million to get into the league.
So why are you worried then?
Because I don't think you want to limit the markets. I think at some point you want to look at it and say, well, hold on here. Can we have... See, the problem with how big the United States is, my worry is you're going to have pockets of the country that don't have a team. So now you've got a pocket of the country that isn't exposed to the sport, and you want all 325 million people exposed to your level. Now, if it's not the top level, then it needs to be the bottom level. Follow where I'm going, and that's where I don't want to close it.
You're going to have to go down more expansion. You're going to have to go down a European route of promotion relegation, which you don't have in the NFL or the NBA. You're going to have to go down that route if you want that.
Yes, and promotion relegation, it's very difficult for whatever reason.
Why is it? I mean, you touched on this when you were talking earlier. It doesn't sit well with us, the idea of a sporting director and a manager. We bridle equally when we hear the talk of a league with no promotion or relegation. Why does it work in the States and why couldn't it work here? And vice versa.
Well, I think one of the reasons it works in the States, which I know we're going to talk about FFP a bit later, but I think one of the things with FFP is that this cabal of elite clubs, they want the best of the American system, which is to make of the American team system, which is to make everything sustainable and to look after each other. But they don't want the worst of it. So they want to jettison. They want to keep everything for themselves. Whereas in the States, one of the reasons it works is, as both these guys will know, is that the NFL in particular is a quasi-socialist system. Basically, there is an even distribution.
Love that model.
In many ways, there's an even distribution of wealth. So when you get the bottom team in a league, they get the first draft pick. That's slightly skewed in MLS. It's the same in the MLS, is it? Yeah. But I mean, certainly in the NFL and the NBA, that's same principle. That's how it works. Can you imagine Can you imagine
It's
AC
sometimes-
Milan or Man United or name any of the top European sides? Can you imagine any of them agreeing to that? They want to keep all the money, but they don't want.
Yeah, it's a great model for competition, the American model, in terms of the NFL, the NBA, the franchise system, because everyone's working with pretty much the same budget. Now you have tax space and cap space, but then it comes down to actual building blocks, infrastructure, coaching, all of the 1% that make your team better than theirs. That's why Bill Belichick amazes me, because he seems to be either in the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl. He's had the same budget as every other coach in every other franchise for the last 12 years. I think that makes for fantastic competition. You have teams that win in the NFL.
He's been penalised for his success by not getting the top draft picks.
Yeah, exactly. So, and in England and in our footballing culture, for sure, there's always been the top 4, top 6, and the rest who are clambering to get to 7th place. That's why I love the American system, the system of, and also it's a completely different culture. That's why you don't have promotion and relegation, because players are recruited from America. You can be recruited from high school. You can be recruited from high school or from college or university. Yep. And I think that's a complete. In England, we don't just stockpile at first team level. We talk about Manchester City and Chelsea. They have 40 or 50 players out on loan. They're stockpiling beneath. So it's so hard for clubs to fight against those top clubs when we speak about financial fair play, because the system is so different to how it is in America.
The reality is, and it's funny that I sit here because as an American, I listen to you guys talk, and here the reality is, though, those sports we kind of created. I mean, there's no other league in American football, right? So they can do, quite honestly, anything they want to do.
Yeah.
Because there's no other competition. With all due respect, and I know I'm sitting here in England, but the European basketball, the NBA is the league that everyone wants to go to. So they can get away with it. Baseball, I know you guys are going to try to tell me you created baseball with rounders, but I digress.
Cricket, no?
Yeah, okay, here we go. But baseball can do something similar. Hockey had to kind of figure out how to get Canada involved because it's Canada's sport. The issue with U.S. trying to do soccer is the world doesn't do it that way.
Yes, so for instance...
That's the most difficult thing for them to try to bring that into it when the rest of the world's doing the opposite.
Because I think a salary cap's a great idea, a salary cap in the Premier League, but we couldn't do it because everybody
European law.
Well, partly because of European law, partly because everybody just goes to Serie A or La Liga.
I think the key is transparency. Look, we know players now are earning fortunes, right? In America, everyone knows who's earning what in the NBA, who's spending what on what player, even in the MLS.
Yes.
Every player's wages is listed, right? So there's no argument of who's spending what. In football, what do you see when you see a transfer? Undisclosed fee. We don't know what money goes to the agent, how much a player's getting in terms of wages, what the actual club has spent in terms of transfer. If you make it transparent, there's nowhere to hide. And at the moment, when you have laws and rules, there's always a way, there's always a loophole. Until you make it transparent, you're always going to have these problems.
Well, that brings me beautifully to our next point. Ollie, financial fair play, and we must stress these are only allegations that are being made against Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain at the moment. But is it actually thrown up not so much questions about those clubs' practices, but the whole thing? And really, what is the point of financial fair play? Who is going to implement any sanctions, if indeed they do? And why, realistically, why shouldn't there be, if somebody wants to put money into their club, why shouldn't they do it?
Well, I believe that, and your last point, I also think there are questions about what is more harmful to our league, whether it's the model that Manchester City have, where you have a benefactor essentially who wants to put money into the club, or a situation like the leverage buyout at Manchester United, where the owners are effectively taking money out of the club, and yet one is fine and the other is deemed not to be because of financial fair play rules. I mean, look, let's not pretend it was a good look for Manchester City last week. The stuff that came out, as you say, if they are true, and I think there are elements where we don't know. We have to be careful because we don't know what the context of a lot of that stuff is. But it wasn't a good look. I think the other reason, when you were saying at the start, why has there not been the impact? I think there is a bit of confusion. Have Manchester City already been punished for this? They have been punished for breaches of financial fair play. Most of the stuff that came out in Der Spiegel appeared to be related to stuff that happened before City were punished. So, you don't punish somebody for something twice.
No.
I think there's general confusion, and I think underpinning it all, certainly for me, there's a cynicism about the fact that a lot of the leading clubs hijacked something that had good intentions and have begun to use it for their own purposes to stop any upwardly mobile clubs threatening their cosy little cartel.